I was always on the fence about kids until I met my husband 6 years ago. He made clear he does not want kids at all, and I agreed to be with him without having kids. A few years ago, his sister was deemed unfit to parent. She was a single mother to a preteen girl and a young boy, and their caseworker asked how we would feel about taking them in. I said that I was in favor, as growing up my life was nearly identical, parents deemed unfit and taken in by my aunt, which was the best thing for me. But let my husband make the final choice, as they're his family, and he's the one who was resolute on being child-free. He said that we could take them, but told me that I would need to do the kid stuff, meaning everything from discipline to doctor visits. I agreed. Right from the time they moved in, he began distancing himself. He'd stay late at work or shut himself in the office all day, and barely interact with his niece and nephew, while I, as promised, handled all the kid stuff. However, him distancing himself upset them, and when I would bring this up to him, he would only ever respond that he was child-free, and I knew what I signed up for. The full legal adoption was completed last year, and the kids have been in therapy since we took them in. 4 months ago, I found out I was pregnant. My husband said that we could keep the baby and he would be involved, but once I was past the A deadline, said that the same rules apply to this child as to his niece and nephew, and he claimed otherwise before, as he didn't want me to A. I don't want this. It's not like I intentionally got pregnant. It was an accident, and I was fine being child-free if it meant I got to be with him. But life clearly had other plans, and I love all 3 of these kids. I can see how much it hurts the older kids that their uncle, legal father, is completely ignoring them. And I don't want that for the baby. But I feel completely trapped, and I don't see a way out. I don't expect to change my husband's mind on kids, but is there anything I can do to improve this situation for anyone involved? What? He dumped his family issues on you to appease your want-ish for children and then locked himself away? And when you got pregnant, he hid information from you about his feelings on it, so you wouldn't A? Excuse me? I know he's child-free, but then don't bring 3 kids into your house. He was unfair to you and stupid. Wow, what a display of the intelligence and foresight of the human race. Your husband is already threatening your niece and nephew with negative feelings of self-worth and all that comes with not caring about them and hating the idea of them. They are definitely not in the best parenting scenario, despite the tons of hard work I'm sure you're doing. Imagine what that'd be like with another kid. Update. As I stated in my first post, my family situation is complicated, and the family members I feel that I could turn to in a crisis form a very short list. I tried contacting my husband's parents and asking them for help, as while we had our issues, I figured that helping their grandchildren would take priority. Not only would they not help, but they informed my husband that I was planning to leave him. This caused a fight the day after my first post, in which my husband and I both said some things, and it doesn't look like we're going to come back from it. I'm still working through my feelings on that. After the fight, I reached out to my aunt, and she told me to contact my grandparents who live nearby. I was hesitant as I have no real relationship with them and struggled to consider them family, so I was hardly expecting a warm welcome. But that is what I got. It was awkward, as I've only met them a few times in my entire life, but they seemed happy to see me. They were a little shocked that I had a preteen and young child with me, but seem equally happy to have adopted great-grandkids as they are at the baby on the way. The kids and I are looking into other living arrangements, but we're safe for now. My husband and I have been together 8 years, married 2 years. I gave birth to our first child less than a year ago. My husband's sister is a hardcore child-free person. She keeps saying she doesn't hate kids, but she does a lot of stuff which makes it seem like she does. More on this in a bit. I want to say I don't have a problem with people being child-free. I don't want to tell other people how to live their lives, just like I don't want people to tell me how to live my own life. The problem is, ever since my husband and I announced we were planning on having kids, and especially since our son was born, my husband's sister has been stuffing her child-free views down our throats to a point where I've started feeling like she is harassing us. Whenever she is in the same room as any of us, she starts talking about how it is selfish to have kids, mostly environmental stuff, about how she thinks that no one actually wants kids and people just have kids out of obligation. Or she starts telling stories about experiences she has had with bad parents, like those stories apply to all parents. There's no point in trying to argue with her, or even try and give her my point of view on these things, or she'll immediately accuse me of trying to convert her. Her attitude towards our kids has also been outright cruel, nasty, and when she is called out on it, she gets mean. An example: my husband and I are visiting my husband's parents, and my husband's sister suddenly showed up on a surprise visit. All of us were in the living room talking when my son started crying, and I went to find out why. The moment I got back, my husband's sister said, "Oh my God, don't go to him whenever he starts crying. You're teaching him he'll get whatever he wants by crying. You're raising an entitled brat," etc. I didn't even bother trying to talk to her about it. And my husband's mother got pretty upset about it anyway and gave her a stern talk. Later on, I found my husband's sister looking down on our son while he was outside in his stroller crying, telling him, "Yeah, you just keep crying. I don't give a crap." I told her my son was crying because he was cold, and once again, she just said, "No, he is crying because you are giving him attention." 2 weeks ago, my husband's family was hosting an Easter dinner, and most of my husband's family had shown up. A lot of people were fawning over our son, which apparently made my husband's sister upset. She went around complaining about how people shouldn't bring small children to parties, and it was just dinner, and how my husband and I were acting entitled bringing our kid like that. A lot of people got mad at her and told her off. The next day, she sent an incredibly mean text to me and my husband about how it was our fault. I told my husband at that point that I was putting my ducking foot down and that I no longer wanted any contact with his sister. I told him I would not attend another event with her present and that I would no longer talk to her. My husband agreed his sister was getting out of hand, but he also thinks I am overreacting. I just really don't see any other way to solve this problem. I've tried being direct with her and tell her to stop. I've tried to reason with her, and I've tried to ignore her. Any advice? Socially speaking, she is getting a lot of feedback letting her know her behavior is unacceptable. She's not taking that feedback and learning from it. So you continuing to set boundaries is paramount here. What that means is entirely up to you, both as a person and as a parent. Limiting her contact with your child is definitely warranted here, with as much disdain as she's shown. If you don't want to attend events where she's at, that's fine, but you can also try to just tell her flat out, "I do not want to discuss this with you. Please change the subject." And then leave the room or the event if she refuses. That way, you don't have to feel like you're banishing yourself from events that you'd otherwise like to go to. Hello everyone who is reading. This story starts in 2011. Then, I was a normal boy with a great family. There was my sister, my mom and dad, and me. I was the same as every other boy. It started after my mom found out she had cancer, and the doctor gave her a rough guess on how long she had left and told us. I still act the same, teasing my sister at times for being the youngest in the family, but slowly over time, I watched my mom get sicker and sicker until she was at the hospital for the very last time. The last few days I was up there talking to my mom, and on the last day I would see her, my mom asked me to do something for her as a last will for her. "Mom, could you please look after your sister? She is going to need someone there to be her light through life. Please, as my last wish, look after her as the big brother you are." I promised that I would do my best to look after her, and sadly, that was the last talk I had with her. And a few days later, we went to my mom's funeral, and I did my best to comfort my sister. A year later, I joined the Air Cadets and was away from home a lot. But one day I came home to see this woman and boy sitting in the living room and asked who they were and why they were in my home. The woman said, "Stepmom." "Hello, dear. I guess you're my husband's oldest boy. I'm your new mom, and this boy here is your new stepbrother." At first, I was confused, and then my dad came out and told me that this was my stepmom and brother. At first, I was really not liking this, but after time, I just got over it. But after a few months, I started seeing my sister was not talking to no one and seemed upset, so I asked my dad if something was up with my sister. He told me she was getting over some girl stuff and said it would blow over, so I did nothing, but I did keep my eye on her. One night, I just got home from Air Cadets and just got out of the shower and walked into the living room. But as I did, I thought something was off. The pot plant had been moved, so I went over to move it back. That's when I see my sister behind it, crying. I moved the pot plant and sat down next to her, asking her, "What's wrong? Why are you crying?" After a few tries to get her to talk, she broke down crying, saying words I could not make out. I did my best to calm her down and asked her to tell me what was wrong. She started talking about that every time I was not home, stepbrother would pick on her and take stuff from her and would say that she was a bee and so on. So then I asked her why you didn't tell stepmom or dad. Then she told me that she did, but dad would yell at her for disturbing him and would keep yelling at her. And she did try to ask stepmom, but she would get yelled at by her too. At first, I did not believe her, but I knew she would not lie over things like this, so I told her to calm down and go to your room, and stay there until I think about what you are telling me. The next day I came and talked to my sister, and told her that what she has told me is hard to believe, but since my Air Cadets holidays are coming up, I'll be home more, which cheered her up a bit. Before the holidays started, I told my parents, aka my mom's dad, who ran the Air Cadets in my town, and he said that he was never told to tell me, but my real mom knew she was being cheated on, and that my dad had been seeing my stepmom for years before my real mom died. That hit me in the heart, to know now that my dad was cheating on my mom. I was upset and angry, but I asked my pa what to do. He said that if they keep on hurting your sister, that he would take me and my sister away to his home to live with him. So I did not tell my dad or stepmom or stepbrother that I was going on holidays soon, and also did not tell my sister. My first day of holidays came, and I got up at the same time as a normal day of going to school. After school, I went home and got changed into my Air Cadets clothes and walked outside saying goodbye to my dad, and instead of going down the road to the bus stop, I walked around back to the back of my home and went back inside through the back door and made my way back to my room and hid under the bed. From where I was, I could see my sister's bedroom door, which she was in, and waited. After some time, I saw someone come to the door and opened it. I could make out it was my stepbrother walking into my room. I could make out what they were saying. My stepbrother was wanting my sister's iPad that I got her for her birthday and started demanding that she give it to him. But she told him that it was hers and that I got it for her birthday. That's when I watched my stepbrother go into the room out of my sight, but I hear my sister screaming at him to give it back, followed by him running out of her room with her iPad. After a few minutes, my sister comes out and goes down to tell Dad. As she is doing this, I'm crawling out from under my bed as I hear yelling from downstairs. I hear Dad yelling at my sister, but then I hear him say, "Evil Dad, you're nagging and making trouble. This is why your mom died. Ever since you were born, you would not stop being such a crying crap." I watched my sister run into her room crying and close the door. I could hear them talking about her, stepmom saying that my sister will never grow up to be a woman like her. At that time, I had called my friend to tell him what happened, and he told me to pack the stuff. He was coming over to pick us up. And I went into my sister's room, which surprised her, as she thought I was at Air Cadets, and I told her to pack her stuff, as Pa coming to pick us up. I packed my stuff and waited in my sister's room, comforting her, and I heard a knock downstairs and heard my dad open the door. At first, I heard my Pa talking to him, then yelling started. Then I heard Pa's yell up for us to come downstairs. As we did, my dad was surprised I was home. I did not talk to him. I was so angry at him. As I walk to the door, I see my stepbrother sitting on the couch with my sister's iPad. I walk over to him and snatch it out of his hands. He started yelling at me. At that time, I had it. I started yelling at him, but this did not last long, as my Pa pulled me outside and told me to get in the car with my sister. My dad threatened my Pa that he would call the police, but Pa showed them the record he had of what he was saying downstairs. "Go ahead, you pig. You never deserved my name and my sister's name." And my Pa walked down, got into the car, and I watched as my old home disappeared. That's the end of the horror of my life living with my dad and his new wife now. Your stepmom and dad sound like awful people. Your stepmom was right about one thing. Your sister was never going to grow up to be like her awful stepmom. OP, I'm sorry that your stepmom is a piece of trash. Basically, we both had S with other people, on a break, and she got knocked up with another man's child. Despite always being child-free, she decided she wants to keep it, so we're divorcing. Now the plan was that she was going to live with a half-sister until she gets sorted, but said sister lives further away from us. So we've had a fair few problems. Suffice to say, our relationship is really deteriorating. Yesterday, I noticed she got her suitcases out and she's packing. I was really happy. I thought her sister came through for her. She says my parents have suggested to her they want her to live with them until she can get things sorted, and they want to help her with her pregnancy. Now, they know it's not my kid, and I'm not helping her raise it. So I ring them up and confront them. Basically, my mom says to them, the ex is like the daughter she's never had and has been in their life for the best part of 15 years. My ex is wanting to keep my name, as it's not looking like she's going to be in a relationship with the baby daddy, and she doesn't want to go back to her maiden name, as she's estranged from her family and has no attachment from the name. My dad then comes on the call. Basically, my dad's Mr. Placid. Never says boo to a goose, and if my mom says jump, he says how high. He says this kid is going to be like family to them, and they're going to be the grandparents it needs. I'm ducking fuming. I just hung up and haven't spoken to anyone since. I can't believe it. What can I do? Their mind is dead set. I feel like I'm in a rut. I'm tempted to just take off and leave it all behind. Even change my own name. Your parents want a grandchild. Make sure your name does not end up on the birth certificate as the father, or you will be financially responsible for the child and possibly her for the next 18 years, if not more.